Imagine being the undisputed king of Halloween candy. It's late October, trick-or-treaters are literally days away from knocking on doors, and bam, you suddenly realize your massive chocolate empire has completely lost track of its own inventory. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to unpack one of the most infamous corporate tech blunders in history, the 1999 Hershey ERP disaster. We're going to treat this event exactly like the complex, high-stakes supply chain mystery it truly is. Now, I want you to really wrap your head around the sheer scale of losing $150 million in sales. I mean, that is just an astronomical figure. And this wasn't happening during the slow summer months, right? This was right before their absolute busiest season of the entire year. For a juggernaut like Hershey, 40% of their annual sales occurred in that crucial, narrow window between Halloween and Christmas. Losing $150 million right then? Yeah, that's not just a bad quarter you can explain away to the board. That is a terrifying, existential threat to the company's very lifeblood.
The financial fallout was swift, and honestly, it was brutal. We're talking about profits plummeting by a staggering 19%, overall sales sinking by 12%, and an absolutely massive 35% plunge in their stock price by the end of October. Wall Street, as you might expect, does not take kindly to a manufacturing giant that literally cannot figure out how to ship its one and only product to eager paying customers.
So despite record demand for these iconic treats leading up to Halloween, store shelves across the country were completely empty. Think about the incredible irony here. Kids were dumping out their trick-or-treat bags only to find competing brands from Nestle and Mars, or, worse, those little cardboard boxes of raisins, all because Hershey's distribution network was totally frozen. But to understand exactly why a chocolate empire of this magnitude briefly crumbled into chaos, we've got to step back. We need to look at the foundational technological choices every major company has to make behind the scenes.
Section 1. Choosing supply chain technology. Building the engine.
When a corporation decides to replace its aging legacy systems, they generally have two distinct paths. The first is choosing an enterprise resource planning, or ERP, system, where all your supply chain modules come from one single vendor. Everything connects seamlessly to a central core. Now, this path offers much faster implementation and easier system-wide upgrades. However, it's a highly inward-looking solution. What that means in practice is that an ERP can be incredibly inflexible. Buying an ERP monolith often means you're forced to bend your company's unique, historical business processes to fit the software's rigid, pre-packaged mold, rather than the software adapting to how you actually do business.
Alternatively, you can go with a best-of-breed approach. Here, you're sourcing the absolute highest performing specialized modules from various different vendors for each specific task. One company for inventory, another for shipping, the whole shebang. This approach is highly customizable and can fit your firm's specific needs perfectly. But it is a notorious integration nightmare. Think of it like building a Frankenstein's monster. It might be incredibly powerful, but making all those wildly different parts talk to each other without causing a system-wide crash requires constant, grueling maintenance. Upgrading just one individual module could cause a disastrous ripple effect across your entire network.
Okay, so once you pick the software itself, you then have to decide exactly how to deploy it. Essentially, you're choosing between buying the software and hosting it on-premises, meaning it sits securely behind your own firewall on physical hardware that you own and maintain, or renting space on cloud, connecting to a network of remote servers hosted over the internet. Back in 1999, Hershey was building a massive on-premises fortress, which was the absolute gold standard at the time. Today, modern companies have the luxury of the cloud option, but that modern convenience introduces a completely different set of vulnerabilities we need to understand.
The reality of modern cloud computing presents a pretty fascinating paradox. While the cloud is highly scalable and the setup time is incredibly fast compared to building an in-house server farm, it introduces a terrifying hidden risk. An unexpected vendor outage, like a major Amazon Web Services disruption, can completely and utterly cripple your operations in seconds. It kind of creates a false sense of security. When that third-party server goes down, you're effectively locked out of your own data. It's the modern, digital equivalent of losing the only set of keys to your own physical warehouse.
Section 2. Deployment approaches and risks. Flipping the switch. The crucial point is that once the tech is chosen and the hosting is settled, how you actually turn it on dictates your entire level of risk. You essentially have a spectrum of options when it's time to launch. You could slowly roll out one module at a time, or run parallel systems where your employees do double the work for a few months just to maintain a safety net. But the fastest, and without a doubt the absolute highest risk option, is the Big Bang. This means cutting over your entire global network from the old system to the new system in one single, highly coordinated day. Think of the Big Bang approach like pulling a tablecloth out from under a fully set dining table. If it works perfectly, it's incredibly fast and impressive, but if just one tiny thing catches, the risk of shattering absolutely everything is immense.
Section 3. Navigating Project Management, the Roadmap to Launch.
Let's transition to how these massive implementations are managed day to day, as this is another vital piece of our Hershey mystery. Traditional waterfall management uses linear, sequential improvements moving through very distinct phases. You gather requirements, you design the system, you implement it, and then finally you test it. The glaring, fundamental danger of the waterfall method is that crucial verification and testing often happen dangerously late in the project timeline. Let's say you spend 6 solid months designing and building a system, only to realize during step 4 that the software entirely fails to account for a key regional warehouse. Finding a fatal flaw that late in the game? Well, that means the cost and time required to rewind and fix it are absolutely catastrophic. Conversely, agile methodologies approach software development quite differently. They break the work down into continuous, iterative loops known as sprints. It's a constant, circular process of development, testing, and review, ensuring constant adaptation along the way. By operating in these tight loops, Agile actually prevents that exact catastrophic late-stage failure we just talked about. You catch the bugs when they're small, cheap, and easy to fix, rather than waiting until the entire system is fully built to discover it doesn't actually work.
Section 4. Dissecting the Hershey failure. Recipe for disaster. Armed with this solid understanding of software architecture, deployment risks, and project management theories, let's play detective. It's time to dissect exactly what went wrong at Hershey. To understand the pressure Hershey was under, we've got to look back at the sheer panic of the late 90s. In 1997, Hershey realized their aging legacy systems simply weren't Y2K compliant. They were terrified their entire operation would crash at the turn of the millennium. So, under immense pressure, they launched Project Enterprise 21 to integrate 3 massive systems: SAP, Siebel, and Manugistics. But by January 1999, critical modules for order processing and scheduling were way behind schedule. Instead of delaying the project and missing the Y2K deadline, they made a fatal, desperate choice. They decided to force a fall completion by switching to a highly risky Big Bang deployment in July 1999.
What ultimately choked the system was a fatal, profound disconnect between the IT team building the software and the people actually running the operations. The new SAP software rigidly required all inventory locations to be explicitly listed in the master data. But Hershey heavily relied on temporary, peak season storage facilities to handle a massive Halloween rush. And guess what? Those temporary facilities were completely absent from the IT master data. The system was paralyzed. Picture this incredible tragicomedy. Massive physical warehouses were literally bursting at the seams with chocolate, while the computer screens stared back blankly, completely unaware that millions of pounds of candy even existed. Orders weren't filled, simply because the software literally couldn't see the chocolate.
It was the ultimate perfect storm of project failure. They rushed the highly risky Big Bang deployment, attempting to integrate a Frankenstein's monster of 3 distinct systems all at once, with an entirely insufficient testing buffer. But let's not forget the human element here either. Imagine the sheer stress of warehouse workers and middle managers trying to navigate and troubleshoot a highly complex, fundamentally broken SAP system, all while their phones are ringing off the hook with furious retailers screaming about their missing Halloween shipments. It was a complete nightmare.
Section 5. The Sweet Rebound. Lessons Learned.
Fortunately, this isn't just a corporate tragedy. Hershey didn't stay down forever. They engineered a massive, inspiring comeback story in the years that followed. They completely changed their culture by appointing a new CIO, George Davis. Davis basically reversed the toxic culture of rushed deadlines and implemented rigorous patience. They instituted highly practical dry runs. Instead of just testing software in a lab, they would physically process completely empty pallets with barcodes through the warehouse just to track how the system behaved and identify bugs before going live. It was a brilliant, low-tech way to verify a high-tech system. By abandoning the panic and embracing this rigorous verification, they successfully deployed their upgraded systems in just 11 months, ahead of schedule, 20% under budget, and ultimately slashing their order cycle times in half.
So, what are the essential takeaways for any operation looking at this case study?
First, you absolutely must embrace transparency and aggressively break down departmental silos. The technical implementation team building the software has to be in constant communication with the operations workers on the warehouse floor who are actually moving the boxes. Otherwise, you end up with another Hershey disaster. And remember that every single tech choice you make, from cloud versus on-premise to big bang versus rolling deployments, is a calculated trade-off. The fastest option on paper is rarely the safest option in reality.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question to ponder regarding your own operations. Does your supply chain technology dictate your business processes, or do your actual processes drive your technology? Look closely at the systems you rely on today. Ask yourself, who is really in the driver's seat?